Welcome to the Take the North podcast. I'm David Haugh from 670 The Scores. Mully and Haugh Show. Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune covering the Bears. Minicamp has commenced. It's over. And now we just do the waiting for the veterans to return. For next time we see them all together. Dan, training camp, 3 days on the field, open to the media. What were your first overall impressions of 3 days of watching the Bears practice?
Yeah, I think the first impression I have is that there is just a different level of attention on things this year for understandable reasons. There just feels like literally everything feels like it's intensified a little bit. You're seeing curiosity about the development and early evolution of a rookie quarterback. You're seeing a defense that's trying to establish itself right now in the early stages of the summer as one of the best units in the NFL. You're seeing the media attention on every single thing that's done out there amplified, and you have a team that is really compelling and really relevant right now. So that's kind of my lasting impression as we send the veterans off into their summer break. The Bears, of course, will have one OTA, a session of OTAs next week. One of them open to the media that is rookie centric, and only rookies will be there. But for all intents and purposes, this was the unofficial end to the offseason program for most of the players on the 90-man roster.
The highlight of the last day certainly was getting a chance to hear from Caleb Williams. I think it was smart to wait until he had a couple practices against the veterans under his belt rather than at the beginning. Talk to him at the end, get his impressions, see his progress. I know he still has another week of OTAs with rookies, but it sounds like the veterans will be long gone and it'll be an incomplete team and an incomplete roster. So before we get to what he had to say, overall, how do the Bears feel about Caleb Williams and his progress that was made in the 3-day minicamp?
Yeah, so I think that there is a really practical lens being put on this right now, and you hear it being messaged by Matt Eberflus consistently at the podium every day that there's an understanding here that this is a rookie quarterback doing a lot of things at the NFL level for the first time, and that you just have to kind of embrace that journey of bringing along a rookie quarterback. Now, look, like you and I are going to be really honest that this is different than most rookie quarterbacks walk into. You've got a team with expectations. You've got a team that really believes it can compete for a playoff berth and even a division in 2024. And so the faster you get that quarterback up to speed, the better for everybody. At the same time, there's going to be some real bumps in the road here. And I think we've seen that in every practice that we've been able to watch now, 3 this week, 2 the previous 2 weeks. And then obviously next week will be a whole different format. But that's sort of the impression here that there's an understanding that this rookie quarterback is going to take time to get off the ground, and they've just got to have patience with it.
That was kind of reflected in what Keenan Allen had to say about, asked directly about the chemistry between him and Caleb Williams. And he said it's a work in progress. It's going to take time. He's not rushing it, and he was careful not to make it sound like when he was talking about the quarterbacks he had played with and developed the chemistry, Phillip Rivers and Justin Herbert, that he wasn't yet there, and it's going to be a while if he ever gets there with Caleb Williams because he's a rookie, and a lot of reasons that are very practical. But I think that the practical approach is the right one because the hype and the exaggeration that kind of goes with the territory. I think the practicality is going to be probably a wise course for the Bears to follow.
Well, one of the things that Matt Eberflus has sort of trumpeted this week, which I think is notable, is this idea that they're not going to slow things down for Caleb Williams, that they feel like he is not only a special talent, but a special learner, and that he can take on a lot of information and they can just throw it at him in high volumes. And they fully expect him to keep up and to show off that trait as a special learner in a way that advances his development. I don't know if they're right or wrong with that approach, but I do know that that's the approach they're taking right now. And it's going to be interesting to see how Caleb responds to this. Again, it's June right now. We're talking about a more intense microscope being put on this process. It's only going to get more intense when we get into training camp, and every single throw of every single practice is documented on Twitter and spit out to the masses to do what they want with it. And so the Bears have to navigate this process properly. I do think messaging is going to be a huge part of this in the next several months before they get to the regular season of just letting the outside world know where they're at every stage in this development so that people aren't getting 4 or 5 steps in front of themselves and expecting something that's not reality. I think that's a huge part of helping Caleb feel comfortable with his own developmental progress, and we'll see how the Bears navigate that.
I think they took a step in the right direction the way that Caleb Williams handled questions at the end of the minicamp, and we'll get to his audio there. Let's start with when he was asked about some of the things the Bears have put into place. Set up the context, Dan, and then tell us about the question and his answer.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I just want to really say this from a personal standpoint. Caleb is a delight to talk to at the podium. And look, like, we're in a room right now where every chair is filled and people are lined up against the glass trying to get questions in. And it's really difficult to get more than one or two questions in during a press conference because of how sought after Caleb is to talk to right now. But he gets up at that podium, David, and there's a level of engagement. There's a level of Mark Grody, our buddy from the Score, referred to it as presence of mind. He's just there, and he's willing to go down whatever path you take him down with a level of thoughtfulness and a level of honesty that's really, really cool to see. And I think you sense it too. The level of self-confidence comes across every time he steps up on the podium. So today it's Thursday, it's June 6th. And I talked to him out of the gates about the pre-draft process being something where he wanted to feel compatibility with the Bears. And now that he's been with the Bears for 6 weeks, just kind of how it's all coming together as he gets his feet on the ground. Here was a little bit of that exchange.
Some of the things they've put in place around you that you feel good about as you get your career off the ground.
Yeah, one I'll say is obviously, we got people like Keenan Allen, DJ, DeAndre Swift, offensive line. That's been the biggest part for me is the teammates. And then obviously when we get out there, the ebbs and flows of practice and things like that. This whole thing, this whole process, just starting for me, being the Bears QB is obviously new for me. So, them being graceful, and encouraging, has been huge for me. That's, I would say, probably been the biggest thing for me. And then just talking to people like Brett and Tice that's, been in, whether it's here last year or whether it was, Brett with all the other QBs that he's been a part of, that's been the biggest thing. And then just finding a routine, whether it was a day that I didn't like or a day that I did like, the day before, getting up, getting in here, going over what I need to go through practice, the right way, have a good positive attitude because I'm leading, not just 10 other guys, but the team. And so, just finding a routine and having the guys around me to help encourage.
In what way specifically have you felt the grace and the encouragement?
Yeah, I mean, even through text message, call, even on the practice field, them just believing, seeing, and seeing the vision that we all have, and being graceful with me, knowing that I'm pretty tough on myself, but they see right through it and understand that. So it's been big for me. Like I said, having these guys around me, and them being graceful, texting me, reaching out, calling me on the practice field, coming over, congratulate when things go good, and then when things don't go our way or whatever the case may be, coming over and saying whatever they have to say, and encouraging.
Pretty mature approach, and I think I think the people will be quick to say, well, he hasn't encountered any adversity yet. They haven't played a game, and he's trying to put his best foot forward. Okay, that's all true, but it's also worth remembering that was the biggest concern coming in to this whole process, the pre-draft process. What kind of guy would he be? He's entering a locker room where his predecessor was beloved, and they were chanting Justin Fields' name at the last home game, and all the things that made you wonder about the acceptance level, the buy-in from other teammates. It sounds like that's going quite well, and it sounds like Caleb Williams is doing himself many favors by bringing humility into the room and not thinking and acting like he has all the answers.
That's a great way to put it, David. It really is, because he is very grounded, and he understands the vision he has for himself. He understands the expectations that this city has for him. He understands what this organization has invested in him. And I think him acknowledging as positive factors grace and encouragement in the early stages of his development is very mature, because it vocalizes to the people around you the things that you need from them to be at your best. And if grace and encouragement are important to Caleb Williams, saying that out loud and acknowledging it when you're getting it allows it to come more often and more frequently and in the way that you need it. Look, like, the Bears have put a lot in the Caleb Williams basket, and it behooves them to support him in every single way that he wants to be supported. And if it means grace and encouragement on rough patches and rough weeks at a very early stage of the development, then so be it. Then you give him that, you coach him that way, you learn what makes him tick and what you can give him to make him tick louder. Right. And so I just thought that was a cool, again, introspective, mature perspective from a kid that's been in the NFL for 6 weeks of understanding that this is not going to be linear. His path from draft night to stardom is going to have some jagged edges to it. And you better be willing to go through those. And you want to do it with people that are going to go through it with you. And so I think that grace and encouragement that he referenced is, him saying to the Bears, hey, hang with me. And the Bears saying right back, we got you. And when you have that compatibility there to that end, I think it's very helpful to a process that's going to be difficult.
It will be difficult to gauge progress through the process. And I think that's what everyone's trying to do, is training for stats during 7-on-7s and interceptions to train Maine Edmonds and Byard and all the things. And yet I think it's going to be more those numbers and those statistics and those details are going to be less important than the overall picture. But you were there when he talked about how he himself would gauge progress. How did he handle that one?
Yeah, look, that's the question here is we're all trying to put our own spin and our own lens on where he's at early in his NFL career. Well, how is he measuring progress through OTAs and minicamp? And here's how he answered that.
First, I ask questions. I ask questions to coach. I ask about my progression. I ask where he wants me to be, where I should be. And then obviously I have my own goals set for myself. And that's to be perfect. Obviously, you strive for something like that. And you don't ever reach it, but you keep striving for it. Whether it's a day that I like, a day that I don't, there's always good and bad in it. And so, just finding my balance and reaching and striving for my goal. And a big part of it is just sticking to the routine, enjoying the process, enjoying my teammates, being a good teammate, going out there and working my tail off.
Good answers, because he's going to ask questions, and he has said that before in various different ways, but he's not going to come in there and do all the talking. He's going to do a lot of listening, and that'll serve him well.
They appreciate that inside the building, his willingness to learn, his capacity to learn, his approach to learning. It's all things that are strengths of Caleb Williams, in addition to the arm talent, the ability to make off-script plays, all those things. Caleb is a unique individual, and you heard me leaving Detroit after the draft and saying, I can't wait to get to be around him more often, because every time you interact with him, he gives you something that's thought-provoking. He gives you something that's thoughtful. And I think that the Bears really enjoy the fact that he can get on that stage whenever his days come up to speak to the media and handle himself with that presence and that maturity, because I think it reflects well on the entire organization, and gives a glimpse into who this kid is, and is why they felt so good at the end of the process, saying, look, we've gotten a lot of reports on who some people perceive him to be, and a lot of reports on who people who have been around him believe he truly is. And I think he's getting a chance now, whether it's at the podium at Hallis Hall, whether it's at the Old Crow, with Bears fans egging him on, to just be himself and show who that is. And I think it's a very likable dude at this stage, even though the struggles are going to be magnified as he goes along this process.
He's finding his voice, kind of literally and figuratively, finding his voice that pertains to the cadence, and everyone else getting used to his own cadence. He's finding his voice in terms of how he wants to lead or how visible he wants to be in Chicagoland, and he has embraced that part of being a franchise quarterback. I think it's also interesting because this is a new offense that he's learning. It's new to him, but it's also new to everybody. And so the scheme is new. So are some of the faces to people who remember last year, but you add Keenan Allen, you add DeAndre Swift. So when he talked about all of the weapons at his disposal, was he speaking more about the talent, the scheme, or combination of both, Dan?
Well, I think it's kind of the way I would put it is this, eventually the Bears are going to have to build a stadium, right? And in the early stages of construction, there's just going to be a massive hole in the ground, and you're going to be like, what is that? Well, that's where they're at with Caleb Williams. There's just a massive hole in the ground right now. But there are renderings for how everyone envisions this to be when the final product emerges. And I think Caleb is trying to balance that idea of I am truly in the grind right now, and I'm trying to take every day and every meeting and every practice to help myself make a little bit of progress. But ultimately, there's something that we're striving to get to. And every once in a while, when you take a step back and you realize some of the tools that you have to work with, there's an opportunity to see something really, really cool here. And so I think Caleb talked a little bit about that, about kind of juggling those two thoughts. Here's what he had to say on that on Thursday.
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty awesome. There's obviously, I feel that there's a light at the end of that tunnel. Right now we're working with our head down, and we're building. And so, just having that moment with myself, I do it every day. As I sit there and say, we're going to be pretty damn good. And so just got to keep working, keep going. And we're all excited. So it's really important to have that mindset. But also have the mindset of like, let's keep going, let's keep working, let's get after it.
I think Bears fans have to love that confidence from the quarterback that, if things go well, they're going to be pretty good. And I don't think anybody who has been paying attention to what they've added through the draft and through trades and through free agency is in a position to doubt that, because that's the expectation beyond just Caleb Williams.
It gives you something to lean on, when you can look to your left and see Keenan Allen, look to your right and see DJ Moore looking, back to the other side and see Rome Odunze, see Cole Kmet, see DeAndre Swift next to you in the backfield. And you go, okay, like I've got something to lean on here. And these guys are going to help me until it's my time to truly carry things. That's all. It's all good, and they're pushing in the right direction. Look, again, like it's going to be fascinating to see how the outside world reacts to the early stages of results. They will play preseason games. They will have training camp practices. They will get into the regular season when the quarterback is certainly not a finished product yet. And that outside reaction is going to change a little bit of things here. But you heard Caleb Williams talk about having a particular mindset in that clip. Matt Eberflus has described it as a beginner's mindset right now, as a guy who doesn't feel like he has all the answers, is truly invested in learning what it takes to get himself right in the early stages of his career. And having that growth mindset day after day after day, I think gives you a little bit of comfort to know that you're making progress. And then ultimately, when you have this vision of like, okay, we can be really, really good here before too long, gives you a little bit of extra juice to go pursue those things.
Last thing on Caleb before we move on to some other things about the minicamp and other stuff. The question I think Brad Biggs addressed in ChicagoTribune.com is the fact that he doesn't have an agent. He won't use one to negotiate his contract. It's typically, we refer to these as boilerplate deals, rookie contracts. That doesn't mean there can't be snags. Roquan Smith comes to mind quickly. 2018, he hit a snag. He had a holdout. It was messy and maybe contributed to a strained relationship with the organization. Don't anticipate that. That's just history that has nothing to do with Caleb Williams, but it just bears it's a reminder that if you don't use an agent, things can get a little bit awkward, possibly, but there doesn't seem to be that concern with Caleb Williams. When do you expect you don't expect any problems, do you, Dan?
I don't. And like I asked Brad when he was starting to write that column, okay, what are you going at here? What are you after here? And he said that, there's been some chatter in his mailbag regularly about whether, there's the potential here for a dramatic holdout or a player who is seeking things that have never been sought before, and whether that would create a tug of war that creates conflict in the building. That's not the case. No one at Haugh Hall expects it to be the case. Caleb expressed confidence on Thursday that the team that he has assembled around him will handle that. The Bears don't have either of their first-round picks signed yet. That's Rome and Caleb Williams. They've got plenty of time to do that. I think Brad said that four of the top 10 picks are signed. That includes, I think Drake May got his contract done here recently, but that's the only quarterback that's had it done. This is all procedural. They'll get there. There doesn't seem to be any fear that there were going to be any unforeseen snags in this, but I guess it's at least worth putting people's mind at ease, given some of the talk that preceded the draft, and some of the fears about, oh no, is this going to be a melodramatic player that we're going to have to deal with at all turns, trying to reinvent the system? Doesn't seem to be the case. And before too long, you hope that you get one of those press releases that say Caleb Williams is signed and he's under a contract for 4 years with a 5th-year option. Yeah,
there's nothing that's happened so far that would make us think to expect anything other than that. What else about the minicamp before we move on to some things about the offensive line and any other observations?
Well, yeah, let's just go to the offensive line right now, because that links right up with the development of a quarterback. And I will tell you this, that the last 2 days of minicamp, Braxton Jones was not only not on the practice field, but he wasn't visible to us beside the practice field. And so you go, okay, what's that all about? Matt Eberflus insisted that it's precautionary, wouldn't give us any sort of specifics on what Braxton Jones is dealing with. But you look out there and you say, okay, well, now all of a sudden your left tackle is missing. Across the way, your right guard position has certainly not been solidified during the offseason, where you've had Matt Pryor, again, taking reps with the ones today, where you've had Ryan Bates playing over there at times, where you've had a couple little small glimpses of Nate Davis before he goes back out and decides to not practice again. The center position, we don't know yet whether it's Ryan Bates's job in Sharpie or whether Coleman Shelton is going to challenge for that. And you go, oh, wait a second. All of a sudden, we're talking about 3 positions on the offensive line that you don't feel 100% confident are solidified. Tevin Jenkins has been there. Darnell Wright has been there. You feel like those guys are locked in. But man, David, I don't know how you feel, but all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, this is a small thing, but it could become a big thing really quickly, particularly in the context of a Bears offense that has been changing offensive lines at every breath in training camp in the regular season for the last few years. And you certainly don't want that to be the case again in 2020.
I think it's just a good reminder. I mean, the margin for error for teams that have not won, and the skepticism and the doubt still exists because they have not won. And you're not really, if this were a different franchise with a different tradition of offensive success. And if this were the Packers, for instance, you'd say, well, if they lose their left tackle, they'll just scheme their way out of trouble. Or if you lose another lineman, they'll just figure it out because they have quality depth. The Bears may have decent guys as the depth. They may have decent guys as starters, but they have not earned the benefit of the doubt. And so when Braxton Jones misses the last 2 practices of a mini camp in June, you don't just dismiss it like you might in Green Bay or San Francisco or anywhere else where there's no concern about what would happen and how they would handle it. It's a point well taken. And I think when you look at the uncertainty with Nate Davis and Braxton Jones, and also Tevin Jenkins was pretty candid about the fact that he came to the Bears wanting to renegotiate his contract the final year of his deal. And they said, nah, it's up in the air. Yeah, those were his words, not anyone else's. So you've got that uncertainty because they're not wanting to talk to him because of his lack of availability consistently over the course of his career. So you've got a question mark there.
Yeah.
You've got other question marks, and then you got a new center. So yeah, I mean it's a valid point you don't want to forget about amid all the hoopla and hype and expectations.
You said it really well there. Don't dismiss it. Nobody's telling you to panic. Nobody's telling you to pull any alarms, but don't dismiss it because if we are talking about this into the first week of August or late July, then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we need to get answers instead of question marks for all the things that are surrounding Caleb Williams, and this offense for it to function at the level that they envision it functioning at.
Montez Sweat practiced, at least he's ramping up. He wasn't a big part of team activities. Jalen Johnson spoke, and also maybe a little bit cautionary about not getting carried away with expectations. I think Byard has been very good in terms of assuming a leadership role, and the secondary has been loud. They chirp a lot, and I think that they can back it up, so I guess they can be.
Yeah, so we heard a couple days ago from Keenan Allen, who said it was one of the sound bites of the week, who said this looks like a top 5 defense. They sound like a top 5 defense too, and it was an acknowledgement that this defense not only is feeling confident, but they're expressing their confidence with high volume and making sure that everyone around them knows that they're going to express it with high volume. I had a chance on Wednesday to ask both Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson what they see as the value of not only making plays, but making noise. And they both use the word intimidating. They feel like it can be intimidating to an opposing offense. Right now, it's their own offense that they're trying to challenge and compete with in a way that, really that they're trying to be imposing and intimidating in that way. I like that. When that identity starts to come together, and as Jaquan Brisker said on Thursday, you can't just make noise without making the play first. And so hopefully the production creates the boisterous nature of this defense, and it all just becomes a chicken and egg conversation about which comes first, But along with that, the head coach was asked about that word intimidating and the fact that his defense is trying to be loud and trying to be vocal and trying to establish itself in the late spring and early summer as something. And he had a little bit different spin on things that I think was worth hearing from the leader's mouth.
Kyler and Jalen stood up here yesterday and said they feel the defense kind of establishing and intimidating was the word they used, edge, with not only their production, but how boisterous they are. I'm curious what you're seeing in the identity in terms of that outward energy and enthusiasm.
Yeah, it's been great. It's been great. And I tell the players all the time, words are awesome. I love words and I like goals, and I do believe in that. I said, but it comes down to what we do on the grass, right? So it's got to be shown out there, right? So, and I believe in saying it and being confident and all those things, but it's in the doing. It's not in there talking about it. So it's important that we understand that. So when we start to perform with our pads on, guess what? We got to be who we say we're going to be. And to me, it's all right there. It's all proof. Are we really putting it out there? Are we really running to the ball? Are we really doing what we say we're doing in terms of the hits principle? And we'll find out. We'll see.
So
Words are awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you of the 3 possible T-shirts that Matt Eberflus, basically pitched to us in that soundbite. Which one are you buying first? Words are awesome. It's in the doing, or we've got to be who we say we're going to be.
I think words are awesome. I think words are awesome because then you kind of come up with all the words that he either invents or reconfigures or manufactures. Words are awesome. You can tell what he means by the way he says what he says, not necessarily how he maybe articulates it, but it's one of those things where when they're loud in the secondary, it's not even like intimidating as much as it just reflects a defensive mentality. The best thing about playing defense, and like if you're offense, is so much intricacy. There's so many things that you have to remember. There's so many checks, and there's so much in your head that you really have to have like this inner peace that you can concentrate amid all of the frenzy around you. Defense is different. Defense is just, you want to loud. If you want to be loud, be loud. If you don't want to be loud, don't be loud, but be yourself, because you got to get yourself into that defensive mentality, whip into a frenzy so you can do things that you're not supposed to do, which is, making an open field tackle is it's as tough. It's like a WNBA play. You're in there and all of a sudden it's as physical as a WNBA in the secondary. So you've got to have that mentality.
I think the other part of this is that we heard from the offensive side of the ball throughout the week is like the relax counterpoint to this, which is we're not in pads yet.
Yeah.
The offensive line isn't allowed to really block any pass rushers. So when a defensive end makes a move and, rips through and you can't really do anything physical with them, the defense is going to hoot and holler and they're going to make a lot of noise, but you don't really have any way to respond to that. And so I think Matt's sentiment there is representative of the idea of like, let's just chill out for a little bit. Let's get into August. Let's see the progress we're making. Let's put the pads on. Let's have some really competitive practices. Matt has talked about having a camp this summer that is just ratcheted up competitively. And if that does occur, I think it's going to be great for both sides of the ball because you have a defense that really feels like its time is now to be we've heard the phrase top 5 in that media room all week. People are referring to this as a top 5 defense. Well, let go, I guess what did I just write down? We've got to be who we say we're going to be, right?
There you go.
We'll be a top 5 defense
before
you talk about it. And then obviously if the offense is challenged in that regard, it's good for them too, and so I'm putting a moratorium today on the phrase iron sharpens iron. I heard that way too much this week as well. That's an old cliche that bounces around. But certainly you've got the makings here of a training camp that should be both competitive and entertaining, and oh, by the way, pretty loud. So come out there with your ears open because you might hear something entertaining.
And one of those guys they'll be chirping at, as we found out on Thursday, Joe Burrow. They will have joint practices with the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a great idea because of who it's against. I don't know how much they're going to see Burrow or Chase or all the weapons in T. Higgins, but the chances are that's a professionalized offense is going to be good to go against at a time during camp where it start to hit the monotony a little bit. But that's a good idea, and I think the Bears have something to look forward to.
I have to make a small correction for you there. It's actually a joint practice, so they're not going to do 2. It's just going to be 1. It's just going to be August 15th.
It's just 1 practice?
It's just 1. Last year they did 2 in Indianapolis with the Colts. For some reason they've chosen 1. I kind of pressed Matt on that after practice today, and he said it's the first time he's ever done just 1. And so he's already been in touch with Zach Taylor in Cincinnati, trying to figure out the logistics and the dynamics of getting all the situational work that they want to get in just 1 session. I'm not sure why it's limited to 1, but the Bengals will come here. The preseason game, Bears-Bengals, will be August 17th. That's a Saturday.
Okay.
2 days before, that'll be the day where you see starters versus starters on both teams going at it. That's one to save the date on if you're one of us. And I don't know if that will – I'm assuming that'll be fully open to the fans as well. We'll get more on the training camp schedule here in the next day or so. But exciting opportunity, right? To especially defensively to test yourself against an offense that's established and has some high-paid superstars in this league that are willing to come in here and give you some work.
No question about it. Look forward to that. August 15th, Joe Burrow versus the Chicago Bears in a practice setting. One practice only. All right. Anything else, Dan, before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, again, like the veterans are off on summer break right now. I don't really know the format of next week's rookie-centric OTA. That'll be our cue to kind of recede a little bit, but there's a lot to talk about with this football team right now, and it's not going to die down in the small bridge that we have between now and the start of training camp, which arrives earlier this year. A lot of fun stuff happening for this football team. Again, the expectation is that we'll hear from Caleb Williams again next week, which will be fun because every time we get even 8 minutes with him, there's something useful that comes out of it. Really getting excited about getting to know him a little bit better and getting inside his head a little bit because there's a lot in there, it seems.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. We'll figure out something. There's always something going on, especially when you have a team that has regained relevance, and the Chicago Bears certainly have done that in this offseason. So we'll let you know. Keep an eye on our Twitter page. Keep on sending us mail for our mailbag episodes at Take the North. Give us the Gmail address again. I always forget that. Take the North Pod at gmail.com. There we go.
One other small tease. Colleen Kane and I have collaborated on a little series that we have done frequently during our time at the Tribune of speaking with the college position coaches of the rookies that were drafted. And so we've got a 5-player class this year that obviously includes Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, not to mention the punter, trick shot artist Torrey Taylor, as Matt Eberflus referred to him the other day. I'm hopeful to bring some of that audio here to the podcast to then tease people to the full Q&As that we will have at chicagotribune.com. I think you'll be entertained and enlightened by some of the things that the coaches that know these guys well from their college days had to offer. That should be fun to share as well.
Trick shot Torrey is somebody I'm always interested in because punters are people too. Absolutely. I look forward to that.
Yeah, it should be fun. And he's had a really good day on Wednesday that was pretty entertaining. And hopefully that's just a sign of things to come.
All right, good stuff. So for Adam Sadzinski, our producer, Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune, I'm David Haugh. Thank you for listening to the Take the North podcast on your free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. And thank you for watching on the 670 Scores YouTube page. We'll talk to you next time.
Great talk. See you out there.